time for the Severe MMA preview show with Sean Sheehan, Spencer Kite, Harry Powell, and your host, Ian O'Neill.
To dare is to do, and Alex Volkanovski is daring to be great on Saturday night as he takes on the lightweight champion Islam Makhachev in the main event of UFC 284. Makhachev himself is trying to forge his way into greatness. He'll have to get through Alex Volkanovski. He's going to start the path down the road to greatness in that main event. In the co-main event, Yair Rodriguez will take on Josh Emmett for the interim 145-pound title. I'm joined by Sean Sheehan, by Spencer Kite, and Harry Powell, and we're going to take you through the top two fights and the rest of the card. Look, this main event is a phenomenal fight, so we're probably going to spend a shit long time talking about it, and it deserves to be. We deserve to talk about a fight of this caliber. It's not a fight that comes around too often. Yes, we see people move up in weight, but we're seeing a dominant champion in the featherweight division jump up in weight class to take on a dominant fighter, not necessarily a dominant champion yet, but a win over Alex Volkanovski will go down well in the history books, and it could kind of forge the path to greatness for Islam Makhachev. I'm excited for the fight. You should be excited for the fight. Shawnee, I know that you are excited for the fight as well.
Yeah, I don't think there is a fight in recent memory in the last probably 5 years, I would say, maybe aside from a McGregor fight, which I've actually talked so much about before. What day we did? Wednesday. Like, I have myself and Harry have a preview coming out over in Sherlock. Myself and you, Ian, last night after a show off screen spent about an hour watching Islam Makhachev fights, just going over like what he does. I was on with John Anik talking about it on the Q&A on the podcast with Graham. Just so, and I'm not sick of it. I'm like, I cannot wait for this. It's such an epic matchup. And I think the key is what you said there, like one guy really, really testing himself while himself still being at the very, very top level, literally the pound for pound number one, and got up against the guy who everyone thinks is basically unbeatable. It is what we love about sports. It's everything we want. You know, it is the best in the world fighting the best in the world when they are the best in the world. And MMA has always prided itself in delivering this, and it is. Like Volkanovski, without a shadow of doubt, is the best 145-pounder in the world. There's some good fighters in the UFC and outside, but he is. For 155 pounds, Makhachev, he is the best in the world right now. He beat Charles Oliveira, who was the best in the world, and he is it. And now they're meeting in a genuine super fight. I think the word super fight is massively overused, but this is a genuine super fight. We can get into all the analytics, and we can get into all the analysis and all of that, but God almighty, this is sporting brilliance in our sport at the very, very top level, and this is one to be massively excited about.
It absolutely is. And before we get into the nitty-gritty of the fights itself, I think, you know, it's going to be important. I'll go to Harry next, just to kind of for his foresight on the fight itself. How excited are you for this? And you know, myself and Sean have kind of expressed our excitement. It's a fight for the ages, and it's one that we should appreciate. It's one that we should be excited about, and one that we should kind of, you know, shine a spotlight on. And that's what we're going to do throughout this show.
I don't get asked, like outside of you guys and whatever, I don't get asked about fights ever, right? There's a lad that I sometimes see on the train, is an amateur MMA guy. And we've spent, I don't know, maybe 6 train journeys over the last 2 weeks talking about this fight. When I'm sat on the mats waiting for sessions to start, people are coming up to me and asking me, like, can Volkanovski stop the takedown? What do you think about the striking battles? Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this fight? And that's never happened to me before. And so I think that speaks to the magnitude of this fight, of the matchup, of how compelling it is. And I think Shawnee sort of touched on it beautifully, is that sport is about jeopardy. It's about stakes. It's about one person or outfit one side putting everything on the line for the most coveted prize. Now, obviously, Alexander Volkanovski has a title already, but to be a two-weight champion and to beat Islam Makhachev for that second title is an insane accomplishment if he pulls it off. I think the reverie and the fan fervor of this fight comes because Alex has been this dominant champion. He has gone through the trilogy with Max Holloway and in such dominant fashion in the third one. He absolutely destroyed Chang Sung-jung in his fight with him recently. He gutted out the Brian Ortega guillotine when everyone thought it was done. He survived the triangle immediately afterwards. And here we are. He beats the brakes off him afterwards. Grand. Islam Makhachev is somebody that Khabib has talked about way, way back. That this guy is going to be the guy. This guy's the protege. This guy's my guy. And everyone thinks Khabib is unbeatable. When Khabib had the title, he was like, Islam's coming. And I'm going to step up, I'm going to have to get out of the way sooner rather than later because he's coming. And now he's here. So not only does he bring the legacy of Abdulmanap and that coaching system, that coaching style, he brings the legacy of an undefeated fighter in Khabib Nurmagomedov and all of the talk that's led from Khabib to him. He carries all of that into his shoulders. He goes in against Arman Tsarukyan a couple of fights in and has an insane back and forth battle. We see him destroy Charles Oliveira to win the title. We see him decimate Dan Hooker. And now he's like, what's next? Give me that Volkanovski fella. I want not just to defend my title, not just to sit atop this 155-pound division. I want that number one pound-for-pound spot. Fuck all these guys. And then he's talking about, I want to finish this guy with strikes. I want to finish him on the feet. Now, we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about whether that's the smartest thing to do or not. But he's out there, and he's saying the things that maybe he needs to say, maybe he wants to say, maybe he believes. But we are talking about a fight of absolutely epic magnitudes. Shawnee Podcasts, I don't know, middle of last year, said the fight that he was most looking for if they could put it together was either Francis Ngannou and John Jones or Cyril Gagné, John Jones. That fight doesn't carry the magnitude of this fight. It's a fantastic fight. We'd all love to watch it and break it down. But this is the type of fight that as fans, we adore the UFC for making.
Absolutely. Like, I mean, when we're talking about defeats in these guys' career, only what have tasted defeat once in both of their retrospective careers. The last time that Islam faced defeat was way back in 2015. Alex Volkanovski obviously was back in 2013, Spencer. I think Harry touched on it. It was what I was going to bring to you. Both of these guys are taking respective risks in their career. Alex Volkanovski, obviously coming up from the 145-pound division, could have easily just stayed there and stayed beating guys. But no, he wanted to challenge himself. He deserves to challenge himself. And with Islam as well, I mean, he's coming in and he's facing a guy who we have been calling the most underrated fighter in all of the UFC. And probably in my books, one of the greatest 145-pound fighters that have ever existed. We have to give credit to both of these guys for taking on this fight. It's crazy to me that, we're one kind of title defense into Islam's kind of tenure, and he's already fighting super fights. It's nuts to me, and it'll be interesting to see where can you go from here if you're Islam Makhachev. But maybe your overarching thoughts on the fight itself, Spencer, first.
I mean, this is the reason I love this sport. This right here. You can take bigger names. You can have bigger names. Fights that appeal to a larger, wider audience, have them. Give me this. Give me number one versus number two guys that are so well-rounded, so supremely skilled and talented and focused and driven, meeting with legitimate stakes on the line. For Volkanovski, this is legacy. You said maybe one of the best 145-pound fighters. If he wins this, we're having the where does he fit in the fucking pantheon discussion.
100%.
Like, we're having the hurry up and figure out your list because I want to talk about it, and he's in the top 5 for me. You go to 13, 14, 15-0 in the UFC with 2 world championships at 2 weight classes, and you stop this dude's winning streak, let's start handing out the flowers and figuring out who's going to carve his bust for the Hall of Fame. And then if Makhachev goes out and first title defense is stomping the 145-pound champion the way he stomped Charles Oliveira, which still I don't think we freaked out about that enough. I don't think people like freaked out about that performance enough. And Shawnee's making a Shawnee face of like, should we have though? That dude was taking everybody's best and then rallying and finishing them and putting them in the dirt. And Islam just went out there and was like, look, you know what my plan is going to be, and I'm going to execute it, and there's nothing you can do about it. These are the best 2 fighters on the planet right now. And in like 3 days, we're going to get to sit down and watch them go at it. And I can't wait. Like, Saturday needs to get here now.
Yeah, indeed. Like, I mean, look at my thoughts. I think you're right in some ways in terms about the Charles fight with Islam, but in another sense of the word, I'm actually less confident of Islam winning this fight than I was against Charles, because I just thought it was such a contrast in styles, and we saw Islam dominate and hurt Charles on the feet, and obviously be dominant in the grappling exchanges as well. But I do agree with you; it was a phenomenal win. For me, Shawnee, in this fight, you know, we had a little bit of a chit chat last night. You know, there's obvious kind of holes that can be taken advantage of from both sides here. And obviously it's the striking game of Islam that Volkanovski is going to try and take advantage of, and vice versa, where Islam is going to probably try and get the better of the grappling exchanges. I think for me, it's not can Islam take him down. I think Islam does take him down, but it's what can Volkanovski do when he gets taken down. Well, we've seen him taken down before in the UFC. We've seen him get back up, and we've not seen him in too much trouble on the ground, bar that one time against Brian Ortega. You are confident that he can get the job done on Saturday night. What's your assessment on how he can do it?
Yeah, look, it's very interesting. He's like a little armadillo when the fight gets to the ground. He's strong and he burrows his way out of things. He gets to a knee, he gets to the side, he gets up. He's very, very good at it. Now, Makhachev is a different kettle of fish when it comes to that, because he is so good. But he's also not Khabib. People forget that. I think he's better than Khabib in certain areas, in many areas, in fact. But he's not as blanketing and dominant as a top wrestler as Khabib was. Now, some would say maybe his jiu-jitsu is a bit better and his transitions at times are a bit better, but Khabib didn't find himself in many transitions, because usually he was connected to you and owning you, because and it just didn't develop, I suppose. What the kind of the face I made there when Spencer was talking wasn't actually anti-Spencer's point at all, but it was just thinking, right, it's such a totally different fight to the Charles Oliveira fight, that like we can go mad about the Charles Oliveira fight, and I 100% agree with Spencer. He deserves it. He deserves all these flowers for that performance. But that performance won't do it against Volkanovski, I don't think, because you look at it, and I think this is my biggest probably piece of analysis coming into this fight. You look at Islam Makhachev for Charles Oliveira and think, Jesus, this guy's a very, very good striker, right? And you look at the matchup and you think, these are both guys who throw absolute bombs. And Makhachev is, I think, very underrated as a power puncher. That guy puts guys out like to sleep. And, you know, Charles Oliveira had been doing the same, or knocking them down hard. And you look at that matchup, and then you look at, obviously, the matchup. You have a finisher in Charles Oliveira on the ground in terms of his jiu-jitsu, and in the unbelievable, you know, wrestling and transitions and jiu-jitsu as well as Makhachev. But it's very different for the Volkanovski fight, because if you're a gargantuan power puncher against Alexander Volkanovski, it's probably no good to you, right? And I was listening to one of those best back and forth in MMA history, you know, YouTube videos that comes up, and it's like 25 minutes. And it was Dominic Cruz talking to DJ Dillashaw, and Dominic said to him, "What advantage you have over me?" He's like, "Power." And he's like, "What good is power to you if you can't hit me?" And you could see TJ going, "Fuck yeah." That's true. That's what good is Islam's power to him if he can't hit Volkanovski? Now, maybe he can hit Volkanovski, and maybe his takedowns allow him to hit Volkanovski, and maybe he does different things to set it up to hit Volkanovski. But I think it's going to be very hard because he's such a fundamentally good defensive fighter in the way he always fights, in the way, not even fights, in the way he places himself. He places himself at all times in such a sound position. It's going to be very, very hard for Makhachev to hit him. And other than that, like, you watch Makhachev for other people, Charles Oliveira, and you think he's a very good striker. You watch him for Volkanovski and you see gaping issues and holes. He does not have as good a jab as Volkanovski. He does not have as good a combinations. He does not have as good a movement. His fakes, his feints, everything about him, apart from his power, I think, is not as good as Volkanovski on the feet. Now, you could say the same on the ground for Makhachev and Volkanovski, but sometimes in these fights, we only look at, oh, he's going to get the fight to the ground, he's going to dominate. What if it's on the feet for 25 minutes? Who's going to fucking dominate then? I think it's going to be Volkanovski in a massive way if it is on the feet for that long, because he's such a phenomenal striker. And you look at him, like, the one fight you think you can almost take out for Volkanovski recently is the Korean Zombie fight. But I don't think there's a fighter as similar to Makhachev in terms of his striking as the Korean Zombie. As, you know, he's not like Max Holloway, really, and he's not like some of the other Jose Aldo and some of the other fighters he's fought. He will attack him if he is fighting him on the feet. And look what happened when the Korean Zombie attacked him. He tore him to shreds and decimated him. This is a fight that could end in a Volkanovski decimation. It really could. He could be taken down. He could be destroyed. But it's also a fight that could end in a Makhachev decimation if it's on the feet, because Volkanovski will eat him up if he comes at him with the same sort of striking game he's come at other guys with. And that's fascinating to me.
Yeah, I agree with that. That it could be a decimation on either side, but it also could be a very close fight as well. And it could be a very close fight between the two. It could be a dominant decision win for one. It could be a dominant decision win for two. That's what makes the fight so fun. Harry, myself and yourself are kind of on the same thought process, where we think that the defining factor in this fight is the size difference and maybe possibly the strength difference coming in, where I feel that Islam is going to be able to take Volkanovski down. I do feel that Volkanovski is going to be able to get back up, but how long can he do it for? And will he be able to maintain it over 5 rounds? What's your thoughts on how both these guys match up?
Look, I think the two overarching areas that we have to ask questions of here are the 3 ranges. So kicking range, punching range, and grappling range. Who dominates those micro battles? And obviously there are various footworking battles that are happening in each of those ranges. There are angle battles, there are height battles, there are feint battles to win in each of those. And I think overwhelmingly, Alexander Volkanovski has the ability to win those battles because he is so measured and compact, and everything has a purpose and everything has a reason, and all of his strikes and all of his work is there for a purpose. I think that the second area isn't, like we've already said, does he get taken down? I think the answer is absolutely yes, he gets taken down. It's what happens afterwards. And Volkanovski himself has spoken about this. He's said, I'm not going to shy away like other guys have. I'm not going to say, oh, fuck, I'm not going to throw this strike because he might get to my hips, or he might do this, or he might do that. Instead, he's going to be like, if he gets to my hips, or when he gets to my hips, I'll deal with that then. Now, that could prove to be bountiful for him, because if he doesn't be tactically aware, we don't use the word fear. If he's not tactically aware of the Makhachev entries, and he's not tactically giving the respect to those entries, that could be either vastly beneficial because Makhachev is like, oh, fuck, he's not bothered about the wrestling. He's just going to tag me, and he's going to keep putting jabs in my face, and he's going to keep chopping at my legs, and this is going to be a huge problem. Or it's going to be the other way. And there's going to be a couple of takedowns, and Volkanovski isn't going to be able to get up like he did against Chad Mendes, where there was, 14, 15 seconds worth of ground control, and he was popped right back up to his feet. I think the realm that I'm most interested in, because I'm relatively confident that Islam can hang in the striking with the rudimentary areas. Let me finish. With the rudimentary areas that he has, because all of his striking is there for one reason and one reason alone, and that's to get to the takedown. So I think Islam is going to be hanging in the sense that he's not going to be throwing mad stuff, trying to compete to win the striking battle. I think he's going to be there to be available in the striking battle and allow Alexander Volkanovski to build a rhythm so he can utilize that rhythm to get to the grappling ranges.
Do you think his striking is that good that he can do that?
I think he has enough tools with a jab and the teep and whatever to make it look like he's good enough. I think all he has to do.
I think I kind of agree with Sean a little bit, whereas I think he might need to rely on a mistake from Volkanovski to maybe close the distance, but Volkanovski doesn't make too many mistakes on the feet either, or he might need to get a little bit crazy to close the distance or to push Volkanovski back rather than have this tit-for-tat technical battle on the feet. I think if it gets in personally,
which does work for him as well, though.
Yeah.
Like I'm not saying he is going to have this tit-for-tat technical battle. What I'm saying is that he needs to not just immediately go to the wrestling. He has to at least attempt to be available in the grappling, in the striking ranges, so that Alex can be in. Like, let's look at Jan Blachowicz versus Israel Adesanya, right? I'm not saying that there's such a vast disparity, but that was rhythm. What won the fight for Blachowicz was, one, being awkward, and two, was in that fourth round switching it up and changing the rhythm. We have seen inferior strikers beat superior strikers by being available in the striking and then forcing the fight to be in the round that they are happy with. And I think for Makhachev, if he is too hesitant on the feet, he's going to get ate alive. So he has to be available on the feet in order to force the grappling exchanges. And then the question for me with Volkanovski is, like, what happens if he can't get up?
Yeah. 100%. No, that definitely makes sense what you're saying. I definitely agree. For me, like you said, one thing I would say is that I wouldn't like Makhachev to kind of jump straight into the wrestling exchanges. I'm going to bring you in now, Spencer. I feel it would be a good idea, obviously not to be thrown blind takedowns. So you're going to have to be setting them up, but at least give the illusion that you're looking to take the fight down. I think you're going to have to try and do that against Volkanovski to get him thinking about it a little bit, to see if you can throw him off. It's easy to say before the fight that you're not going to be thrown off, but it's a completely different kettle of fish when you're inside the cage, to be honest. And, what's your kind of, actually, Spencer, you're a guy who had picked Islam. We're letting down the curtain here a little bit. The picks aren't out yet, but you had picked Islam at the start of the week, and then you kind of threw a spanner in the works today, and you've suddenly changed your mind. What was it that made you change your mind in who is going to win this fight?
I sat down and watched the interview that my colleague Zach Packlub did with Alexander Volkanovski, answering some questions that I sent in that he had put some to as well. And I mean, to be clear, from the get-go, this to me has been as close to a coin flip as possible. Like, this isn't, I don't think it's decisive one way. Like, I don't look at this as Islam smashes him or Volk smashes him. This is on paper a super compelling, super close fight. And the thing that switched it for me, and it was a thing that I thought about, it was my question on Wednesday. What if Alexander Volkanovski's just that dude? Like, what if he's just that guy? And I sat there and I watched the interview, and Volk talked about his evolution since coming into the UFC and between every fight, because it was a thing that I wanted to speak to him about. He gets better between every fight. And it's not just little things here and there. He gets better in fights. And he comes out and he's reinvented himself from the start of his UFC career to where he is now. We weren't talking about him as a terrific boxer and great striker and all of those things, footwork, movement, all of those things at the start of his UFC career. Now we are. We know he's got the mental toughness. We know he has insane conditioning. We know that he's a guy that is going to do every last bit of work. And so you were talking about, what does Islam needs to threaten and show that he might be. Volk knows the takedowns are coming. Like, you don't go into a fight with Islam Makhachev thinking, this guy's going to just stand with me. He's been wrestling his ass off at Bang Tao with the
Yeah, but you
Hickmans.
can go into a fight, Spencer, and you can settle into a fight per se. But if you allow Alex Volkanovski to settle in this fight, I think that's bad news.
100%. Oh, 100%. Makhachev needs to go in there. Both guys need to go in there. Like, I wouldn't be surprised to see Volk come out and just give him a little, like, I could wrestle if I want to. Maybe I'm the guy that goes for the takedown. I think that applies in the co-main event as well, and we'll get to that eventually. But I would not at all be surprised if Islam starts coming forward and he gets a little aggressive and Volk just ducks under. Even if it's just for a little fit in, get a little body lock, get around his waist and just be like, I'm here too. I think this to me, and the reason I changed my pick is going to come down to mentality and mindset and mental toughness throughout the course of the fight. I know what I have in Alexander Volkanovski, and I'm not 100% sure in what I have with Islam Makhachev. I think that he's rock solid. I think that he gets there and it's fine, because you don't come through that gym. You don't follow Khabib. You don't learn under the late Nurmagomedov for years and not be rock solid. But what happens when you get into the third and fourth and fifth round where you haven't been, and you haven't really been, and I mean, he's been in the fourth round once, but he was dominating. He hasn't been pressed very much in his last bunch of fights. What happens when you get into those rounds and the Australian crowd's going crazy and Volk's right there in front of you and he's smashing jabs in your face and he's starting to stuff some takedowns and it's all getting harder? He's talked about everybody else I go in with is, I get a hold of them and they crumble. And Volk said in this interview, if you think that I'm going to go in there and you're going to get a hold of me and I'm going to crumble like these other guys, I can't wait to see the look on your face when that doesn't happen. And that is what made me switch it, because I know what I got in Alexander Volkanovski on Saturday.
Yeah, and that was
find out about Islam Makhachev in a big way.
That's it, and that's why I'm kind of looking. My pick was a third round submission. I am kind of second guessing it a little bit as the week goes on, because we do give our picks at the start of the week. What I felt is that we might see Alex Volkanovski wilt a little bit. That's what I feel. We might, because we don't know how good Islam is yet. And I think that would prove, if he was to go out and do that and get a finish over Alex, that would prove how elite level that Islam is. There's just so many variables in this fight. It's absolutely phenomenal. I could talk about it for hours and hours.
Can I just jump in and ask on that? We don't know where he is. Is it strictly for you because he hasn't been in there with the rest of those elite guys in the division? Like, he hasn't been in there with the Gaethjes and the Chandlers and the Poiriers and that?
Yeah, I think it's exactly that. And that's not necessarily his fault either, Spencer, because, those guys weren't lining up to fight him. We've seen him go in there and dominate Charles, which would be the first elite level fighter in my book to tick off the list. I think he deserves 5 ticks if he can take away Alex Volkanovski, to be honest. And there's going to be plenty of guys coming after him as well. Johnny?
Throwing fucking shade there. You're a boy, Arman Saryukin, are you?
He's not Arman Saryukin is a prospect. Arman Saryukin is going to be elite level in probably another 2 to 3 years. So we'll see what happens then. I have a feeling that we're going to see that Islam and Saryukin fight again. I mean, Saryukin, I think, is going to be up there along with Rafael Fiziev as well. And, I was going to go down the road on what's next to both of these fighters, but fuck that. It's all about what's now and what's going to happen on Saturday night. We'll talk about it and time again what's next for both of these guys, win or lose. Let's just enjoy this fight for what it is. Does anybody else have anything to add before we move on?
I have one thing as well, just want to throw it to you, Harry. The thing you're saying about there, about we haven't seen him against top level guys, right? We also haven't seen him in many different parts of an MMA fight in the UFC, even against like UFC level guys, never mind the top level guys. Like myself and Ian looking for it last night. We were trawling through all of his fights, looking for like large, pieces of striking or anything like that. They just don't exist, really. And if he's forced into them against Volkanovski, who is a higher level than anyone he's fought, but also that anyone he's sparred with, no matter who it is, Volkanovski's going to be a higher level MMA striker than any. He simply is. Like, there's no one. that's going to be a massive issue for him if he's pushed there. And your point that you made earlier as well, Spencer, that like this mightn't be a domination, it's going to be a close fight. I think it's going to be like periods of domination that make a close fight in the end. You know, you could have one guy dominate round 1, one guy dominate round 2, half of round 3 could be dominated by either of them, and then we see what goes on in like round 4 and 5. It's such a brilliant fight. Like two other things as well that are like tangibles, let's put them that way. The Perth crowd, which Spencer said, which could be a massive thing, but the size, like you see the guy right up there behind my head, Demetrius Johnson, the greatest fighter to ever live. Alexander Volkanovski is on that path, and what's the only thing to ever beat Demetrius? It's this, injury to his shoulder against Cejudo and shit judges, but Dominic Cruz's size. Dominic Cruz's size and his ability to push him against the cage was the only thing. Could it be the same here? Like, maybe. Those are the things we need to be looking out for, and that could decide it. Like, if Islam decides to just push him against the cage rather than even take him down at the start of the fight and just wear on him a little bit and use that size, it could be a massive thing. And one thing before I throw it out to Harry's, because I know the point he was making earlier on about needing to set it up on the feet if you're Islam, I think that only comes into play after the first maybe 90 seconds of the round. I think he needs to barrel forward and go for takedowns like Habib did, like he does in fights against Volkanovski early. I really think he does. We've seen that in all his fights previously, well, most of them anyway, and it's almost always been successful. He finds a way, he finds a little leg to push you against the cage to take you down. If he doesn't do that against Volkanovski will settle, and then he'll need to find like extra intelligent ways to get that takedown, unless he barrels forward again. And if he barrels forward at that stage, with Volkanovski settled, he's going to catch him fucking hands very, very quick. So it's interesting. I think that tactical part of it is very interesting.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that as well. Where and Harry, you can probably speak to this better than anybody. Whereas that, you know, you can train and you can kind of train to counter the setups that Islam comes in with. But when you do barrel forward, you know, it's a little bit of chaos and you don't necessarily know what's coming, and it's very difficult to train for that kind of aspect of grappling, really. But obviously, like Sean said as well, you're going to be running and barreling into someone of a decent striker like Alex Volkanovski, who can counter that barrel in as well. But when it comes to the size, I think it's a size and a strength thing. And I think that we're going to be surprised with Alex Volkanovski's strength in this, because I think he's absolutely wicked strong. I feel where his technique lacks a little bit, and we've seen his technique getting better each time he's gotten in there and gotten taken down. What the defining factor for me with Alex's kind of takedown defense is his strength and his ability to get up using that strength, and his ability not to get tired while doing that and defending takedowns numerous times. But for you, is that a major factor? Is that something that you're looking at?
Yes, the physicality is definitely something, but I don't really agree that it's his strength that gets him up. I think that he has a great get-up game, right? He keeps his knees close to his chest. He keeps his elbows and his knees connected. And he does a really good job of not allowing hooks, not allowing grapevines. And when people are around his hips, he does a good job of getting to the cage and being able to get up. Now, it is strength a help in this, an aid in this? Yeah, absolutely.
It was against Brian Ortega for sure.
Right. Like, what was he, 230 something pounds when he was playing rugby? Like, that's fucking no joke, lads. You know what I mean? Like, the level of power that he will have, maybe not strength, but power that he will have in his body after moving around that level in an athletic endeavor to now be doing it on Fight Night. What is he? 158, 160, something like that, right? It put a bunch of weight back on. It's going to be different. I think the other thing to talk about for Volkanovski is that the camp, right? You don't need necessarily the striking, but you've got Brad Riddell there, who's a bit longer, a bit taller, and he will be able to emulate the style of Islam Makhachev's striking, right? Straight striking. He's brought in, I believe it's a Russian fellow. I don't know his name, but about the same size as Islam for his wrestling rounds. And as always, he's brought in Craig Jones. Now, people I think are blowing up the fact that Craig Jones is in his camp. If you don't know, Craig Jones is one of the elite level grapplers, sport grapplers. Over the last little while, Craig Jones has built a team called B Team with an American wrestler called Nikki Rodriguez, who, high school wrestler, college wrestler, whatever. People are saying, oh, well, Craig's got this B Team and he's doing wrestling now. That's not what he's in the camp for. Craig has made his name for pulling guard and doing leg locks, right? I mean, that's not going to help Alexander Volkanovski in an MMA fight. Let me tell you that for nothing. I think where Volkanovski might have some interesting tricks and movements is against that style, having an ability to use jiu-jitsu to create scrambles and use jiu-jitsu to offer submission threats. And I don't mean locking in guillotines or throwing up triangles. I mean the threat of a submission coming in steps 2 and 3 that will make Islam Makhachev react and allow Alexander Volkanovski to move to underhooks, get to a knee, release body locks or whatever it is. Those are the things that I'm the most interested in, because I do believe that there are going to be points in this fight where Islam Makhachev is either pressing Alexander up against the fence in a clinch situation, on a single, on a double, with a body lock, whatever it is. And there's going to be moments when Alex's hips touch that mat. And I'm really interested to know inside that camp, how have they prepared for that? Because Alex has said himself, his stature, his size, his body frame, he's really hard to hold down. He's very good at being able to move through those transitions. And we saw with Arman Saryukin, Shawnee mentioned it earlier, if you have an ability to scramble against Islam Makhachev, you have a chance. And I think that's because, and I'm going to make one more point, I think that's because Islam is somebody that wants to be positionally fluid. He wants to be able to take positions and utilize positions and move through positions to get to where he wants. Habib wanted half guard with a Dagestani handcuff and to smash you in the face. That's the difference, right? And with Alexander Volkanovski, I disagree with Spencer. I don't think he's a good boxer. I think he's a complete MMA fighter. And I think we have to disband of he's a good boxer, he's a good kickboxer, he's a good this, he's a good, because all of the ranges and all of the transitions are different in MMA, all of them. And so you can have what's perceived to be a jab, but the range you throw at a jab in boxing in comparison to MMA is like 2 foot apart, right? So I think what we have to be saying with Alexander Volkanovski is he is probably, next to Demetrius Johnson, the most complete fighter we have seen in a long time. And it's not an individual skill set thing. This is MMA. This is modern MMA wrapped up in a bald man from New Zealand. And like, we're going to see. We're going to see. Shawnee and I have done speakers' corners about specialisms versus generalisms, or being a generalist versus having a specialism. We're going to see.
Can I just say one thing as well? And it was that point I wanted to make even coming into this and nearly forgot about it. Like, I feel a little bit, right? I'm kind of 50-50 on who I think will win. But I'm kind of picking Volkanovski because I believe in MMA, right? Like, I believe that being the best all-round MMA fighter in the world is the best thing in MMA to be. Like, that thing I was saying about what I was watching the other day, you know, the best MMA slags or whatever it was called, and fucking GSP said something about Josh Koscheck. Jeers, let's put it that way. And he was like, oh, you know. And yeah, you slag. Josh Koscheck was like the antithesis of GSP. He was a wrestler with an overhand. You know, McGregor always says it, or Tyron Woodley, a wrestler with a bit of an overhand. And like, is Makhachev just a wrestler with a bit of an overhand? Like, he's more than that. He is more than that. But he's not Volkanovski. You know, he's not Volkanovski. Now, maybe the size and maybe going up in weight and maybe changing all of that is a big issue. But Volkanovski is the ace. He is the premier. Like, I don't really pay attention to the whole rankings, pound for pound stuff, right? I knew Volkanovski was number 1. When I heard Makhachev was number 2, I was like, he's number 2? Like, he's not the second best pound for pound fighter in the world. Make no mistake about that. I don't care if he beats Volkanovski at the weekend. He's still not the second best pound for pound fighter in the world. He's just not. Very, 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 very good fighter. But Makhachev's ability compared to Volkanovski's ability as an all-round fighter is not close. That doesn't mean Makhachev won't win. He's a favorite to win. He's a big favorite to win. But that says more about, the way MMA can be fought. But I believe maybe we're not there yet. Maybe it won't be 2023. Maybe it'll be 2025. Maybe it'll be 2030. But a fighter like Volkanovski, who is the brilliant all around, that is what we should be reaching for in MMA. And I believe we're nearly there. And that's why I'm picking Volkanovski.
Absolutely. I think to wrap it all up, what Spencer said was absolutely correct, is that, we're labeling Alex Volkanovski as obviously already one of the greatest 145 pounds. We're going to be talking about the greatest of all time if he can go in there and get the job done on Saturday night. And to me, I'm going for Makhachev, but me, as someone who loves MMA, watches MMA and covers MMA like everybody else here, that's what I want to see. I want to witness history. I want to be a part of history. And we're going to see if history can be created on Saturday night in the main event. And I get fucking goosebumps and all kinds of shit talking about this fight. But we must move on. Like I said, I could talk about this fight for the whole preview show, but we must pay some dues to the rest of the fighters on the card. And in the co-main event, Yair Rodriguez and Josh Emmett will be waiting in the wings, possibly for Alexander Volkanovski for his next fight. They will fight for the interim title. What a award that is. Congrats, you're the interim fighter. You get to fight Alex Volkanovski. Yay. I'm not too sure how excited you're going to be about that. But look, it's a good opportunity. I'm very happy for Josh Emmett that he has got his chance here. I think, Yair, I'm not so happy for, but credit to him. He's up there. But I think, I don't know. His career has been weird, taking time off, talking about retirement. Whereas I feel that Josh Emmett he's, like I said before, an old dog for the hard road. You know what I mean? And look at Yair as the pup for the pat. So I think that Josh has taken the hard road to get here, come through injuries. I think Yair has kind of found himself in this position because the UFC want him in this position. But I'm not going to say that he's going to lose this fight. I feel he's going to win this fight against Josh Emmett. But it's a very intriguing matchup, Spencer. It's a very intriguing stylistic matchup on the feet because you've got that quick movement, speedy kind of striking style that Yair, flashy style that he will bring. And you've just got that juggernaut of power that Josh Emmett brings in, where he can touch you on the chin at any stage of this 5 rounds and put you out in an instant. And I think that's what makes this fight more intriguing to me than anything else, is that can Josh Emmett catch him? Can he get him? Or can Yair be elusive enough for 5 rounds? Or maybe should we be talking about Yair getting Josh Emmett out of there perhaps as well? What's your thoughts on this co-main event?
I mean, I think we can talk about either man getting the other out of there. We've seen Yair Rodriguez finish people. He has that flash. He has that creativity. And those things lead to guys getting caught in weird positions. We all remember the Chan Sung Jung knockout with the up elbow. I was seated cage side when he switch kicked Andre Fili in the face and knocked him into next Tuesday. Those things are possible when you're facing Yair Rodriguez. And then we know what Josh Emmett brings to the table in terms of that big power, both hands, lasts throughout the fight. It's not 2 rounds in and it starts dissipating, carries it all the way through. The other interesting wrinkle to this, and I do think it's going to be a striking battle, but I said it a little bit earlier in the main event. I think it applies here too. Does Josh Emmett want to wrestle? Like, we know he's got it. We know it's there. He really should. We heard his coaches in the last fight telling him he should wrestle against Calvin Kattar. Like, get in there and just even threaten it. Just make it be a thing that Yair Rodriguez has to think about. Conversely, does Yair Rodriguez come out and just for a brief moment say, hey man, let me get in on this. He's wrestled with Izzy Martinez for years and years. He has a little bit of it, certainly not his strong suit, certainly not what he wants to go to and rely on throughout the fight. But either of them can go out there and sort of just throw that little bit of a wrinkle that makes you think for those extra half beats. And that opens up the striking. That opens up the opportunity. Because if Josh Emmett just marauds forward, shelled up as he does, looking for those big shots, Yair Rodriguez can move around and just pick him apart for 25 minutes. And conversely, if Yair just kind of stands in there wanting to get into a fist fight and he's got the speed advantage, Josh Emmett get in there and wrestle him a little bit. It suddenly changes things up because Yair hasn't shown any real great strengths on the ground, any real great ability to get up, get out of things, attack from his back, anything like that. So as much as I think we're going to get a striking battle, I really am fascinated. And the coaches I talked to for the coach conversation this week, both of them, their big X factor, their big thing that they're looking for is just Josh Emmett come out here and do more than just look for those big bombs.
Yeah, I think it's a very valid point, and one that should stand through for this fight as well. Harry, when you're looking at this fight, what are you looking at in regards to how these guys match up, and how do you expect the fight to go down?
Look, I think the variable here, and the variable we must always talk about, is who is the more complete fighter, right? And the more complete fighter in this matchup is Josh Emmett, right? We're going all over the gaff at the minute, lads. Please hold on. Right, we're sorted. The most complete fighter in this fight is Josh Emmett, right? We know that he can do some of the striking. We know that he can do the takedowns. I feel like, for the most part, Chang Sung Jung, we watched for, 99% of that fight, he was winning. And he was winning by taking some of the shots of Yair, landing himself, and mixing in takedowns. Why was Max Holloway so dominantly successful? Because he mixed in some takedowns, and he landed some shots, and he pressured Yair, and he took some shots. Can Josh Emmett take a shot? Yes. He's been in some wars. He can take some shots. Now, I do think there's a wrinkle to that, right? Has he taken too many shots in the last little while? Has the eye fixed? Has everything else sorted itself out? Is he in a position of real being healthy for this and ready to take this war on its merits? I don't know. But I feel like the blueprint to beat Yair Rodriguez has been there since Frankie Edgar. Yair has gotten better in that his strikes have become more creative. He's been more fluid in those exchanges. But I don't think we've seen a vast uptick in his ability to get up from grappling situations, to be in positive grappling situations himself. And so if I'm Josh Emmett, I think the rhythm thing is big for me here. If I can put Yair Rodriguez on the back foot a little bit, if I can take some of those shots and land on the counter, if I can mix in my takedowns, it's going to make Yair more tactically aware of those takedowns. And for me, I'll just say it, I feel like I can see at some point that there's going to be Yair throwing a big something, a big swinging something, whether that be a hook or a kick, and Josh Emmett is going to come through with some form of hook as he meets it, as he jams him, and Yair's going to be off balance, and we're going to have big problems in this fight. That's what I see.
Sean, what do you see in this fight? What do you believe is the X factor that will win this fight for one of these gentlemen?
I think what Harry said there is very true. And the more I think about it this week, the more I'm leaning that way as well. I have picked Yair to win a decision, but I don't know. Like, if you're asking me what the X factor is here, I think the predictability of Josh Emmett is the X factor here. If he is the most predictable fighter of the four of these lads we're talking about here, and that's actually a very much a plus point for him in terms of getting him to be a top fighter. But getting to be an elite championship level fighter, it's a minus, I think, because he has such a pace. He throws such an array and amount of shots. It's very hard. It bamboozles everyone. It bamboozles people. They just don't know what to do with it. And he can fucking hit and hurt, and he can wrestle, and he can do it all. He can do it all. But then you get to a level where you're a guy like Yair Rodriguez, and Harry said he has to push him back, and he does have to push him back, but he has to push him back, not back. So Yair Rodriguez take a step back, and then take a step left, and then take a step left, step right, and he's gone altogether. And your man is, like Ronda Rousey against Holly Holm. that's going to be a problem because that's how you get fucking tired. And Josh Emmett's not a guy who gets tired. He keeps going and going and going. And I think that might be his biggest advantage here. That if Yair does get tired in the latter half of the fight, I think he can keep that insane pace with the insane pressure and the insane output throughout the whole fight. He's shown that. He has shown glimpses of maybe not in the past, but I think in general, and he'll be ready for this one, he does. But it's going to be
Man
very
got through
hard.
5 rounds with fucking 2 bum knees against Shane Burgess, I believe it was. So I mean, that's ticking off the boxes for heart, tenacity, and wanting to get through it. And it's a very solid point going in here. Whereas we've seen Yair on the other end break mentally as well.
Yeah,
you know, so
Yair as well. Like, he's only fought for fucking 10 minutes in the last 3 years. Like, he had the one long fight against the Korean Zombie, and 10 minutes is obviously an exaggeration. But like, he hasn't fought that much over the last while. Like Spencer mentioned about Volkanovski, he improves after every fight. Yair is just like the same fighter he always kind of has been, with little bits of improvements, but he hasn't been fighting enough. And I think if and like that's kind of going in against my own point of thinking he'll win, but I really don't know. But the one big point, just before I throw it back, that I think in this fight is that, like, if Emmett keeps barreling forward the same thing throughout the whole fight, what Harry said there about like a left hook or something, I think it could be a fucking flying knee or just a high kick or something will come from Yair Rodriguez, because he's such a predictable fighter. Like, he's the exact opposite of Alexander Volkanovski, who's like throws so many feints. He's so unpredictable, and he leaves himself in such a good position at all times. Josh Emmett is predictable, throws no feints, and leaves himself in bad positions at many a times. That works out well for him sometimes because he hits harder, he's braver and better than most people he fights. But when he gets to the very top level, he's not going to be. The one issue as well with this fight is, right, we have the champion of this weight class who's far superior to the both it is on the same card, and it kind of makes him look bad. And also, there's another fight between 2 other featherweights on another card who are both better than these guys. No offense to either of them. And that demeans this title a little bit. I'm not one for giving out about interim titles or anything. I like interim titles, to be honest, most of the time, but it does take away from this one a little bit. Like, there's no doubt about it, Arnold Allen should be in this. There's no doubt about it, Arnold Allen should be in this fight. Against Josh Emmett, fair enough, Max Holloway, he's had many chances now since he lost his belt. He needs to work his way back up, fair enough. But the fact that he's not, and the fact that Yair Rodriguez has not earned it, absolutely. You know, Ian, you said you weren't happy for him at the start, and it's like, I'm looking at Arnold Allen and I'm thinking, like, what does this guy got to do? I know maybe injuries and maybe they wanted to he wouldn't be ready in time and all of that, but still, it does take away from the fight a little bit. But as I said, you give me a good fight and I'll take it. I'll enjoy it. And I really do think this will be a good fight, because Josh, I hate saying it this way. It's a very Irish saying. I think maybe people outside of Ireland won't understand it, but I think he's stupid enough to make it a good fight. You know, like Michael Chandler is stupid enough to make his fights good enough fights. You know, they'll just barrel forward and it'll be great crack. So that's what I expect from this one.
Absolutely. I think that's the key for me, and that's why I kind of was thinking about this fight and why I have chosen Yair, is because we do know that the wrestling could be the X factor here if Josh Emmett chooses to, but I don't know if he will. I think he loves just kind of getting into those styles of fights. Look at, he had the chance in these previous fights to kind of introduce wrestling, and we haven't seen it yet. So I'm not so sure. Maybe the title fight will spark that little bit of a change. That time will tell when it comes to that, but it's going to be very interesting to see what happens in the co-main event on Saturday night.
I think he will wrestle, but I think he'll give up on it. Like, if Makhachev wrestles, it doesn't work, he'll keep wrestling and wrestling and wrestling. Josh Emmett comes across to me as a guy who knows he needs to wrestle, will wrestle, and will give up on it when it doesn't work, which is a big problem.
100%. We shall move on. I know, Shawnee, you can't stay too long more, so you're going to take off. So we will switch from 4 into 3. And thanks for joining us as always, Shawnee. It's great to get your opinions and your thoughts. And check out the Bain podcast for all of his action and reaction next week on Sunday. Right, lads, we shall move on into the welterweight division. I feel that this is a good fight because it's a step up in certain regards for Jack Della Maddalena against someone like Randy Brown, who I consider a very, very good fighter also in the welterweight division. But for me, this is all about Jack Della Maddalena. It's this test that he deserves, that he's ready for, and I'm excited to see how he deals with it. Harry, how are you expecting to see in this welterweight showdown?
I think this is the perfect matchup for Della Maddalena at this time. He's out here and he needs this. This is the guy, right? This is the test, right? We always talk all the time about these lads needs tests at the right times. You need to push him here. You need to do this. You need to do that. You need to do the next thing at the right times, at the right times, at the right times. Well, we saw him make a couple of little mistakes against Ramzan Emeev. We saw him make a couple of little hiccups here and there. And then now he's got a tall, lanky, can fight in both stances, could do a bit of wrestling, can definitely do a bit of jiu-jitsu if he gets to your back. We've got a guy in Randy Brown who is absolutely available at any given time to do the fighting in whatever realm you want it to be in. And I think for that, that's the test we need to see. I think that Randy Brown doesn't have enough on the feet. I think Della Maddalena has an amazing ability to find space and to create space and curate space. I don't know that Randy Brown is going to have enough to deal with that necessarily. But we have seen Della Maddalena become a little stuck on the ground at times, being caught in that dance against Emeev when he really shouldn't have, being in positions where he really shouldn't be getting in them. And if Randy Brown could test that, and Jack Della Maddalena isn't 100% focused, and you'd like to think he is, this is the biggest fight of his career, but if he isn't 100% focused, Randy Brown will find him out, and Randy Brown will ask some questions that are very difficult to answer if you're Della Maddalena. So I think this is, for those reasons, this is the perfect matchup, because you have a guy in Della Maddalena who we are all pretty high on. I think it's fair to say we're all pretty high. We're all ready to see the rise. We're all ready to see the things. And it's now just a question of, where are we? Like, we've talked before about Ian Gary needing one of these fights at some point this year. And so this is Della Maddalena's chance. And now we're going to get to see. If he goes through and smokes Randy Brown inside 2 rounds, all right, motherfucker, we're on the train. Let's go. Let's see you against a insert name. I'd like Vicente Luque. But, like, let's see you against a whatever, right? If I'm Ian Gary, when I beat whoever it is next, and I then go on and maybe it's the Brian Barberena, that's his version of that fight. So I love this matchup. And again, for Randy Brown, if he goes in and beats Jack Della Maddalena, well, we take all that hype and we're like, just so you know, I'm still the fucking guy. It's my turn to get another shot at X fighter or Y fighter. I like this fight.
Absolutely. I like it too, Spencer. It's an exciting fight, and Harry kind of covered it absolutely perfectly there in all aspects, to be honest. And look, it's, for me, we know what Jack Della Maddalena is going to do. He's going to come in, he's going to walk forward, he's going to put pressure on, he's going to try and back Randy Brown up, and he's going to try and get off some of these big shots and get him out of there. That's what he's done. He's passed all of his tests with flying colors so far in the UFC, and this is the perfect test at the right time for someone like Jack Della Maddalena. And also it is for Randy Brown as well. He needs to prove that he belongs there and in his position in the rankings in the welterweight division. But I feel he has a real tough task ahead of him on Saturday night, just for the tenacity, for the will, and the style that Jack Della Maddalena will bring. How do you feel that Randy Brown can keep that Della Maddalena off of him and not end up getting knocked out, basically?
So I want to start by saying that Randy Brown has won 4 straight fights in the UFC. He's been here for, this is his 8th year. And so I think we kind of you said at the start, it's a little bit of a step up. This is a big old step up in competition for Della, right? With all due respect to Danny Roberts, he ain't on Randy Brown's level. Like, nah, son. Randy Brown's legit. Randy Brown is one of those guys that casual fans and people that pay attention in the mid ground know his name, but don't appreciate how good he is, how much he's improved. And so in terms of what he needs to do, he needs to be Randy fucking Brown. Be long, use your kicks, use all of that length, move around well. As Harry said, wrestle a little bit if you need to. Get on his back. Give him a bunch of questions that he has to answer because, as Harry pointed out, as you said, he covered it pretty well. He'll make a couple mistakes here and there. He'll do a couple things. He'll get a little bit over ambitious, and he's fighting at home, like home. He is a Perth boy. This is a big deal. He wanted this opportunity, deserves this opportunity, merits this opportunity. But this is absolutely a fight that Randy Brown can go out and be like, yeah, you're not ready for this yet, man. I'm not Danny Roberts. I'm not Ramazan Ameev, who's 34, 35 and had you in a bad spot at one point, but then just can't carry it. Like, we forget this is only Della's 4th fight in the UFC. It's only his, I think, 16th fight overall. Like, Randy Brown's been in there with some guys that are problems, and he's learned from it and he's grown from it. The one thing that I do think he needs to do to be successful is just be more active. He spends a lot of time standing and looking and waiting on stuff and looking for the right spot. And he feints well. He does all of those things, but you got to throw. You got to just
stand and
jabbing.
You
just
cannot stand
use that range, jab and move, keep circling that way, and just throw in the jab and throw those teeps up the middle and, check some knees up the middle and make sure he knows that those are there. But this is absolutely a fight that he can win. I think Della gets it done because I'm ridiculously high on him and maybe I'm a little bit overexcited about him. But this is going to be a hell of a fight for anybody that's like, this is a terrific fight.
Yeah, brilliant. I agree.
Fight.
And you both guys, and I didn't mean, I guess my wording gets, my wording is my wording. Sometimes I didn't mean to disparage what type of a fighter that Randy Brown was, because even to Harry's point that, this is the kind of test that Ian Gary needs. It definitely is. He hasn't come close to a caliber of fighter to Randy Brown yet. And it's not going to be Keenan Song either in his next fight. We would expect this probably level of competition for Ian Gary in his next fight. But I think there's one point I want to focus in on there that Spencer said, Harry, and that is the fact that Randy Brown does get caught standing at times, does get caught miring his work a little bit too much. And it's something that he cannot afford to do against Jack Della Maddalena, because he's going to end up regretting it immediately, in my opinion. And I feel it's going to happen at one stage in this fight, and he's going to get caught. And then I think if he gets caught clean against Jack, it could be big trouble for him.
Maybe. I mean, is he going to get caught? Probably, or almost certainly, right? This is an MMA fight at the end of the day. I think the thing that impresses me the most about Della Maddalena is how he uses the body work and the active body work to set up shots to the head, right? He likes fighting long. He likes fighting in that more boxing range than in MMA range. He likes to pressure. He likes to be in and around the pocket. And when he gets his feet moving, he looks great. Right? He looks real good. But the question for me is, Randy Brown has a really nice front teep and a really nice back teep. And he uses those long old legs to just be like, you fucking stay over there for a sec, please. Don't think you can. No. Fuck off over there. Right? And I think the question for me is, how does Della early deal with the range? If Randy does come in and does throw, are we going to see a little bit of wrestling offense from Jack Della Maddalena? Are we going to see a footwork battle? Are we going to see, is he going to swipe away at those legs and come with overhand rights or come with straight lefts?
That's what I think he might do. I think if he's going to be throwing those teeps, you're trying to time those teeps with leg kicks. And I think that will kind of maybe steer Brown away. It's an excellent counterpoint that you made to stifle the pressure that Jack Della Maddalena is going to bring into this fight.
Right. And the other answer is leg kicks. We've seen that he's taken a few leg kicks in some of the fights that he's been in. And so if I'm Randy Brown, I'm kicking him from the other side of the cage. Yeah. And I'm saying, look, motherfucker, you need those feet to come at me. So let me chop away at those ankles. Let me chop away at those calves. Let me chop away at the top of those knees. And then we'll see how much you want to be in. Like, I think one of the points, and Spencer said it, is Della Maddalena makes some mistakes. But I think that's an overconfidence, a level of overconfidence, and maybe a little bit of naivety, because he has not had a test like Randy Brown yet. Because Randy Brown will punish you for those mistakes, whether it be on the feet or whether it be on the ground. And if Della Maddalena is going to be so headstrong that he's going to be happy to walk through shots to get to where he thinks he wants to be, I'm not sure he's going to take the level of, he's going to have taken the level of damage that Randy Brown is going to try and put on him to get there. Now, it may be that all of this that I've just said is garbage. And he walks over there and he says, fuck you, come here, and just destroys him. Could do it. Could see it. But if that happens, I'll be there on Monday, probably writing about it for the Spotlight. Right?
No better man, no better man. And I want to just confirm that nothing that comes out of your mouth, good sir, is garbage ever. So it's great to have you on and getting your insight on this fight. And just to reiterate what Spencer said, I'm well up for this fight. I'm really excited to see someone like Jack Della Maddalena go in there and see if he can mix it up with a guy to the caliber of Randy Brown. And look, if he doesn't, he's only 26. He's got plenty of time left as well. And, you know, we mentioned Ian Gary. That's a fight I would love to see down the line. I'd be very surprised if it didn't happen as well. We should move on to the heavyweight division. Spencer, what do we have to say about this fight? I know that was coming from Harry. What do you have to say about the fight between Justin Tafa and Parker Porter? Tafa has his own chance to kind of win in his home nation. How do you see the fight going down? I expect Justin Tafa to go in there and put hands on him early, and I hope he gets him out of there, because if he doesn't, we're probably going to see an absolutely awful fight, to be honest.
What I have to say is that it's happening. I'm hoping for the outcome you just described, where Justin Tafa goes out. I mean, he scored a head kick knockout last time. We don't see a lot of head kick knockouts in heavyweight MMA. He is a good athlete. He has big power, but he hasn't fought in over a year. And so it's just and he missed weight for that fight. First dude ever to miss weight at heavyweight. And so these are going to be two big burly fellas that if somebody doesn't land a keg of dynamite right out of the gate, we're getting into, this is where you go fill your drinks, hit the loo, all of that stuff. Like this could get real bad.
It could
real quick. And I don't understand why it's here.
Yeah, why not put fucking Tyson Pedro and Modestus?
Just something.
Yeah, anything at all. But this is the prelims headliner. But how's it ever? We'll talk about Tyson and Modestus in a little bit. Harry, you had something to say there?
There's a washing machine of like 5 shit heavyweight fighters, right? You've got Jorgen De Castro, Jared Vanderaa, Harry Hunsucker, Parker Porter, and fucking Justin Tafa, right? And maybe
listen, mate, there's a bunch more than
there's
that.
Way more than that.
A couple of those fellas you mentioned are no longer on the roster, but they still qualify as terrible. Yeah. This is a stack washer dryer of terrible heavyweights that are never going to go anywhere, that are going to show up in the middle of fight night events going for. We have it next weekend. Josh Parisian's in there. Don't forget about our guy Josh. He's fighting next week. Waldo Acosta Cortez is fighting in a couple weeks. He's in there. Marcos Rogerio de Lima is in there.
Oh, dang. What a fight.
My guy Jake Collier used to be the prototype. Now he's a different type. I mean, this is throwing another oceanic fighter who comes from a combat family, whose family is known. His kid brother Junior is a hell of a fighter from what I understand, was going to be on this card. And it feels like they were like, well, we were going to showcase one of the Tafas. Let's showcase the other.
Yeah.
And I hope it works out.
Hopefully it does. We're all striving for a quick early finish in that fight for sure. The next fight, which will open up the main card, Jimmy Crute versus Alonzo Menefield, is an interesting fight. I feel that Jimmy Crute, had a taste of elite level competition, didn't work out too well for him. Obviously, getting that leg injury against Anthony Smith and losing devastating fashion to Jamal Hill, the now light heavyweight champion. Okay, look at you go, you test the waters at the top end of the division, it doesn't work for you. But Harry, for Jimmy Crute now, it's a chance to kind of press reset. It's a chance for him to get on the bike and kind of get a win here against Alonzo Menefield, who himself is coming in on a 2-fight win streak, 2 first-round finishes as well. So a little bit of mixed bag in kind of the career trajectory of both of these guys right now. But I feel we've seen the best and we've seen the worst of Jimmy Crute inside the octagon, and when he brings his best, he's a very difficult fighter to defeat.
Yeah, I think this is a tough fight for Jimmy Crute. Like I've picked Jimmy Crute, again pulling back the curtain. I've picked Jimmy Crute because I want to always try and pick the more technical fighter if I can. But Alonso Menafield sometimes just does athlete things and just barrels on forward and is like, eat this right hand and you're going to go to sleep now. And I have a feeling like Jimmy Crute's now come off, obviously a horrendous leg injury. These things happen, whatever. And then he gets absolutely flatlined by Jamahal Hill. Again, these things happen. I just wonder, are we a little gun shy? Are we a little, I'm not sure, I don't want to get clipped. Are we a little hesitant? Are we a little, because if we are, Menafield's just going to start pouncing and he's just going to be throwing kitchen sinks at you. And I exactly take your point, but I'm not sure that I can trust that the best Jimmy Crute will turn up for this fight, because if he does, and if he can, fine, no problem. We saw against Anthony Smith, he still managed to double leg Anthony Smith with one leg. And like, all right, cool. Let's see the same thing. Now, Anthony Smith and Alonso Menafield are very different caliber of athletes. But let's see that same cerebral IQ approach come when you have both legs. Let's try and sap some of that early energy from Menafield. Let's try and weigh on those arms. Let's try and fill those legs and calves and forearms up with some lactic acid. And then if you want to do your striking, fine, no stress. But let's take a more tactical approach to this than just going out and getting flatlined by Jamahal Hill.
Absolutely, I agree. And you know, it's you know, you're always very measured in your approach and your analysis. Obviously, everyone knows at this stage I'm very excitable in my analysis, and I am expecting Jimmy Crute to go out there. Look at, I think, the coming back off 2 defeats, getting the chance to fight in his home nation. You know, those are all things that should get him motivated to be able to compete. And I do feel even an 85% Jimmy Crute is good enough probably to beat someone like Alonso Menafield eventually, if he fights in the right manner. I do what Harry says. I feel to get the best possible result, he needs to play the long game in this fight and maybe take Alonso Menafield into deep waters. How do you feel this fight is going to play out, Spencer?
I think it should be Jimmy Crute coming out, changing levels, putting Alonso Menafield on his back and using his Brazilian jiu-jitsu and his overall grappling, because we've seen Alonso Menafield put to sleep by a Von Flue choke in the past. We've seen him just completely, you know, fish out of water on the ground. That's how it should play out. Will it? I don't know, because Jimmy Crute likes to throw hands. Jimmy Crute likes to go out there and get into bangers. And sometimes, so far, he's been a guy to me that looks like exactly who he is. Just a 20, like he's 26 now. So he's been in the UFC for 4 or 5 years, and he was just a baby. And he made some mistakes, right? The first loss to Misha Serkinov, he's winning the fight, and then he makes some mistakes, and he gets a little aggressive, and he gets caught. You get knocked out by Jamahal Hill, these things happen in MMA. The fight with Anthony Smith, you get kicked and you get the dead leg, and they don't let you continue. Mind you, Jimmy Crute was like, nah, I don't care. Let's go. I'll fight him with one leg. He was the Black Knight in Monty Python. It's flesh wound. Let's go. He's going to go out there and look to trade with this great big human being who, as much as it's a 2-fight winning streak, let's call it a 1.5, because the Ashkar Mokhtarian,
yeah, that's
not a real fight.
No,
that doesn't count. That doesn't count. But he's looked okay, right? In knocking out Misha Serkinov. He's switched up his camp, his training with Pat Barry and Greg Nelson and those guys now. He's always going to be an explosive athlete. And so to me, Jimmy Crute coming back off a year off in terms of getting the ACL reconstruction, 2 losses, go and take the path of least resistance. Go wrestle, put this dude on the ground, take some of that energy out of him, and then beat him in the second round, tap him out.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If you're listening, Jimmy Crute, that's the way to go. Listen to E. Spencer Kite right below me here. One thing that I'm not expecting to see is great wrestling exchanges in the next fight that we're going to talk about. One thing I can see in this next fight is someone's going out. Tyson Pedro versus Modestas Bukauskas. Spencer, I'll stay with you. You know, we had a brief discussion about this, and you know, my kind of opinion on this fight is be careful what you wish for, Modestas, because, you know, you want him back in the UFC, and now you've got a real tough guy in front of you again. How do you feel about this fight? Are you kind of letting along the simmer? These two boys like to go out and swang, baby. And I think one of them is going to fall.
Hammers are going to be thrown from second one, as Harry likes to say. and it's just going to be a matter of who takes it, right? And I lean towards Tyson Pedro getting the better of it, just because a little bit more diverse in terms of his attacks. We see him use some kicks. We see him do a little bit more in terms of mixing up his strikes. I think I understand Bukowskis wanting to get back and taking this opportunity, right? But this is his third fight since like early November. And so taking short notice against a guy that's a proven finisher, that's had some success in the UFC on real short notice, just a couple months after you won the Cage Warriors title on the final day of December, like it feels a little hurried. And so I don't think we're going to get the best version of Modestas Bukauskas. I think it keeps him in the UFC and it gets him another opportunity, and maybe he gets that step backwards. But at the same time, it's not like Tyson Pedro has shown thus far in his career that he's a world beater. I think he's improved. I think he's grown since those early fights and through his 3-year layoff. But I think he's the better guy and he gets it done on Saturday.
Yeah, I actually couldn't agree anymore with what you said. And it was something I was going to bring to you, Harry, and that's the quickness of the turnaround for Modestas here. You know, we're not just talking about 3 fights in quick succession. That's 3 camps in a row as well, where you're sparring and you're taking a lot of damage as well. And you're coming in here against the one hitter quitter, really, in Tyson Pedro. How do you feel about, obviously we're all happy to see Modestas get that opportunity inside the UFC and get back in there again. But sometimes, you know, it's kind of not always the best decision to kind of just jump in there willy-nilly with someone as a caliber of fighter as Tyson Pedro. What's your feelings on it overall?
Look, we saw Modestas come up in his first Cage Warriors run, just destroying everyone, right? Just absolutely murdering lads. Elbows, punches, rear naked chokes, the lot. He enters the UFC. He fights my favorite fighter, Andreas Michailidis. And, you know, he gets the win. Grand, no stress. He then suffers some pretty horrific finishes. He goes out, and to me, when you go out the first time, you've tasted the level. And he tasted a good level, right? Michael Oleolenchuk, Khalil Roundtree, and Jimmy Crute. Fine. Good fighters. Good understanding of where your level is. I think the time away, the idea should be to improve your skill set and get tested again. Get tested against guys that are going to make you more confident that the next time you go in, you're going to have a better run. Now, I know that he's gone to an Olympic wrestling school that's in the middle of London called Prometheus, and there are some fantastic Dagestani, Russian, Iranian wrestlers there, and that will absolutely help him to shore up his wrestling. He's doing a lot of work with Will Drago Curry, obviously a name on the Cage Warriors scene, and he's in and around some good guys. But we look at who he fought outside of Cage Warriors, when he was at Cage Warriors. He fights Lee Chadwick, who at this point is, if he wins a Cage Warriors title and holds it, that's a fantastic achievement for Lee Chadwick. I think he was the Cage Warriors champion when Modestas fought him. But it was a gun-shy, gritty, not very technical performance from Modestas, and really he should have been running over Lee Chadwick. He then goes out in his next fight and fights a guy that at the time was 5-0. That's not what you want to be going to the UFC on the back of. And Modestas took 4 rounds to put him away. Now, I'm not saying that this is going to go the same way, but I feel like the opportunity when you get cut from the UFC the first time is to go back and really shore up those holes and then put performances in that really put you in the shop window. Now, you win the Cage Warriors title, fair fucking play. We all know that that's the golden ticket to get to the UFC. But why not just defend it a couple of times more? Ask Cage Warriors, chuck me just a young UFC veteran, just a little piece, pay him a packet of prawn cocktail crisps and a flight over, and let me just smash this dude up. And then let me do this, and let me do this, right? He's a young enough fighter. What is he? 28, a light heavyweight. He's a fucking baby. You know what I mean? Like, take the time so that when you go in, you're not being landed with fly the other side of the world on 2 months' notice after two back-to-back camps, and fight Tyson Pedro in his home city, in his home country. Not his home country, but you know what I mean, like the Oceanic region. Like, I don't think Modestas has used the time out from Cage Warriors to the best of his ability. Now, he could go in there and he could beat Tyson Pedro, no problem. I don't think it happens, though.
Yeah, I would tend to agree with that. Very well said as well. Like, it's just a huge risk. And I think the way Tyson Pedro cracks is going to be big trouble for Modestas here. It will be interesting to find out. Look, we've gone through a lot of time. We've a bunch more fights to go through. Look, obviously we're going to pay more attention to the top of the card and that fantastic main event. Spencer, if you don't mind, taking me through some of the highlights of the prelims that you're looking forward to on the card as well.
Okay, I'm going to do this properly this week.
Do it all the way through.
And talk about a couple,
yes,
as opposed to last week where I fumbled the bag, talked about the flyweight road to UFC finals, and then didn't use 48 minutes to talk about Rinya Nakamura, who looked absolutely fantastic.
We both fumbled the bag, Spencer. I'm not going to let you hang on the sword for that now on your own. I could have suggested you talk about more. I just went into host mode where you were finished. And
Harry could have too. He just sat there laughing.
Yeah. Harry just wanted to just make
he
fun
just
of us
enjoyed
both
the chaos.
after it happened.
Yeah.
Like 1 second after we finished, he was like, "You messed that one up, lads.
Yeah.
But why not say
Thanks,
it when
fella.
we're on?
Appreciate you.
Yeah.
So a couple other names that sort of stand out to me, and Harry and I were actually talking about Melsik Bagdasaryan earlier today, just sort of who is this guy? What does he want to be? He's 31 years old now. He's 2-0 in the UFC, good winning streak. As Harry would say, he can do the fighting, good kickboxer, has some power, but just not sure where he fits because he hasn't fought in a year. It's a good matchup against Josh Kulibau just to figure out where he is. Kulibau's 2-0-1 at featherweight, draw with Charles Jourdain, then a couple of decent wins by decision. So that one's interesting to me. I'm interested in seeing Jack Jenkins' debut. I spoke with him yesterday. He's another Contender Series grad. He's trained with Alexander Volkanovski in the past, knows the Della Maddalena boys, came up with them a little bit, is just one of these guys. And the main takeaway I got from him, he's 29, he turns 30 next month. He's not your typical UFC newcomer. He's not this guy that is getting there and is overwhelmed by and super excited and all like pumped up about, oh my God, I'm in the UFC and, puffing his chest out. It's just another thing to him. He's been on this journey for a while. He's just believes in himself, fully confident in what he can do. And I think he's going to look good against Don Shainis. I'm always interested in seeing Loma Lookboonmee fight. I think she's putting pieces together every time we see her. I want to see a little bit more of that. And then, I'm a sucker for Zubara Tukagov, but he's also the most frustrating dude in the world because he could turn up looking great. He could turn up looking garbage. He could not turn up. He could miss weight. Always a possibility. Never know what you're going to get from him. I'm hoping we get the version we saw the last time he fought against Ricardo Ramos because he looked terrific. He's a guy that has 3 losses in the UFC or his 2 losses and 1 draw in the UFC. They're all split decisions. Like, he's this dude that if he just cranked it up that much more, he might be undefeated. And we're talking about him as one of these supremely talented Dagestani fighters that is in the mix in his respective weight class. He just hasn't wanted to be that guy, it seems like. So I want to see what he does on Saturday. But for me, top to bottom, I'm sitting down, I'm getting settled for the first one, drinks and snacks at the ready, and let's go, because this is a great fight card.
Yeah, we're in for a hell of a fight card. Harry?
I just want to give a quick shout to Jamie Malarkey. I'm excited for that fight. It's a shame that Nasrat Haqparast had to pull out with injury. That would have been an absolute banger. But I don't know anything about Francisco Prado, but Jamie Malarkey is always fun, gritty, long, likes to punch a bit. That'll be a fun fight.
Yeah,
Francisco Prado, 20 years old, undefeated, likes finishing fights. Should be fun.
Fucking that enough has me looking forward to seeing them fighting. It's going to be a fun card from top to bottom. The Australian crowd are going to be there. They're going to be boisterous. There's probably going to be drinking out of shoes all night long. I'm sure what's his name, Tai Tuivasa will be there. There won't be a shoe safe in that arena on Saturday night. And there'll be a lot of fighters that are not going to be safe as well as they go in to throw some fisticuffs. But it's all about the main event for us, baby. I cannot wait. Islam Makhachev versus Alex Volkanovski, the super fight, one of the best fights, one of the most highly anticipated fights that I've been a part of for many years, in my opinion. I am a guy who will walk around and do the Conor McGregor striding back and forward probably before this fight kicks off, because it's such a big contest. I cannot wait for this. You should not be able to wait as well. You cannot. I cannot even put into words. I'm so excited. I'm fumbling the bag here. Something serious. It's ridiculous. That's how excited I am for this fight. I'm frothing at the mouth for Saturday night to come. Check out at BJJ_Harry Powell on Twitter, at eSpencerKite on Twitter and Instagram as well. Check out the Severe Spotlight. Check out the Severe Takeaways. The guys will be here on Tuesday to break down this entire card. Sean and Graham will do so in less detail, shall we say, on Sunday. We've got the spotlight. We've got 10 things I like. We've got 10 questions, and we've got the Severe picks and plays with me and Spencer coming on Friday as well. Always look forward to that. If you're into losing a few quid, that's the place for you. But
we're the man to talk to if you want to lose money.
Absolutely. As always, we will leave with the reminder to please sign up to SevereMMA Patreon. Lots of great content out there. Speaker's Corner, one of the best podcasts that you listen to be honest, in the mixed martial arts sphere right now. You can check me out in the Contender and the Chasing Pack over there. And plus, check out the Ultra Angle as well. We'll be back with Bellator specials and IMAF World specials in the coming weeks. But it's all about UFC 284 this weekend, baby. Cannot wait. Islam Makhachev, Alexander Volkanovski, Yair Rodriguez versus Josh Emmett in the co-main event for the title. Enjoy the fights. We'll be back next week. Tune into SevereMMA.com for all the action and reaction on Saturday night. Take care, folks.